gonna go find my friend. I'm gonna go talk to this person about that. It was really nice talking to you. I hope we can keep in touch. Here's my business card. I hope we can go to another meetup sometime, etc. But that is a completely fine and polite and nice way to move on, talk to someone else, but also still maintain this positive feeling and potential new connection for you. Now, although it is great to make friends, not contacts, I think it is important to be careful who you share your insecurities with. And I don't know if someone's been burned like this before, but I definitely have. Where, a friend that was on my team, I was managing a project, and we had a terrible meeting where this dev started going rogue, and afterwards I turned to this who I thought was a friend on my team and told her about all of these things I was worried about was going to happen now that this meeting went that way. And of course everything was fine. My manager was on the call, we worked it all out, etc. But 6 months later, we get our reviews, and I had written this same person a review this long, this positive, about all of the things how amazing I thought she was. She said all of those things that I told her I was worried about in my review, though. All of those things that I said I was concerned about having happened, she was like, I don't know, it was something that was like, that the team wouldn't be as involved or, think that I can drive this or whatever. She used those words against me. It was like she kept it in her pocket and then 6 months later pulled it out to try it. And that's because Microsoft had a terrible stack ranking system at the time where you couldn't be successful without being more successful than others. So your success made you a target, unfortunately. So I share that story because as you're meeting new people, and this is a vulnerable time, you may feel like you want to tell them I'm worried about all these things. I'm worried about coming off stupid. I'm worried that I've been looking for too long. I'm worried, etc. Whatever you're concerned here, that might not be helping you as much in these certain scenarios. And that's because, our friends, if we think about the way our friends see us, right? They might know these insecurities about us, but they also have all of this other information. They've seen us be successful in a million other ways, and so they'll hear our insecurities and then kind of cancel them out themselves and then, cheerlead you, right? But for someone that you just met, what else are they gonna go off of? If you're only telling them, this is how much information they know, and half of that information were things you were worried about, and they don't know yet that you're just humble and modest and self-critical, which are great qualities. But this is the time when you're making friends, not contacts, to really introduce yourself in the way that your friends see you. And of course, if only we saw ourselves the way our friends saw us, right? Just think we would all be much happier and more confident people. So try and portray yourself in that way. And I know that this is difficult also, especially for women, for anyone that's read Lean In, but I've also actually seen this come up for many men too, which is that we assume that if we do a good job, all we need to do is just do a good job. And then someone's gonna put a tiara or a crown on our heads and say, good job, here's a wand, whatever. But that's actually not gonna happen. We have to advocate for ourselves. If we want that tiara, we need to tell people what we're working on and what we're capable of, how our friends see us. Now, on that note, I think it's also important to make it easier for people to help you. Now, I know that I'm sure that there have been people in your life that have told you that they will do something for you. And maybe you are awkwardly kind of waiting for them to follow through on that. Is anyone in that kind of limbo right now? Yeah? So,
I have a question. I think that's a loaded question. You expect people to help you. I think we should put an expectation that I will get no help whatsoever.
I think
And,
people want to help.
and
If
when the
you,
help comes, it's like icing on the cake. I think if we had that expectation, then we would feel good.
I think you raise a great point in that we're always going to be able to help ourselves more than others. And we shouldn't wait to, and this is difficult because people always say they want to help, right? And then you're like, okay, so you're going to take care of this for me? Great. But that's not how it works. What I will say is that if you make it easy for someone to help you, it will be way more likely that they will follow through. Because if you, like, let's look at it like this. You met this person at an event, they know someone that works at this company that you want to work for. Now, they said that they would refer you on, and they already have your resume because you guys are friends and they've had it in the past. So what they would need to do in that situation is remember that they promised that. Draft up an email, attach the resume, maybe even look up your LinkedIn and include that in there. Now, those are, like 4 to 5 steps that, I mean, who hasn't done that for their friends, right? But if you draft an email for them and you write it in the way of that, you're writing it to them, but you're really writing it to whoever they're sending it to afterwards. All they need to do then is press forward, write 2 lines, say, hey, please see this candidate, they're great. And that's something I don't think it takes more than common sense that is more likely to convert, to use marketing terms, than the other way. The other part is that I think a lot of people feel like they're being flexible and open-minded by saying, I'm open to whatever opportunities, especially when, of course, the people who want to help, the connectors in your life, right? Like, oh, I know this person, I'll introduce you, I know this person. What makes it a bit difficult when people are, open to all types of different opportunities is that as the person is essentially trying to scan through their, internal address book, you're not giving them keywords to query, right? If you tell them even just some buzzwords, like a consumer company, it doesn't have to be specific, but just buzzwords like that help bucket it, even just narrower than everything, right? Consumer, marketing, HR, ops, you can even give them 5 different buzzwords that are completely different because maybe you're considering different roles. But either way, those buzzwords will help trigger their memory. And that will make it easier for them to help you than if they're just like, oh, okay, well, I'll try and think of something, So another thing is, so a lot of my my job in marketing has been tied to email, and my work is essentially in a lot of ways in my inbox, and I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten just ridiculous times later, like months later, weeks later, whatever. And they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was tied up with this, or I'm sorry, it was crazy with blah. And then they just continue on. And that's fine, we just pick it up from there and keep going. And I think at first I would get really wound up. And I mean, a lot of you have been in the workforce for so long, maybe some of you have gone past this. But I've found that it took me a while to realize that it's not personal, it's email. And there are a lot of people that are just bad on email. Like, it's like when you get them in a room or you run into them or whatever, or you just, with the people that you work with, that they're better over chat or they're better over the phone or whatever. And so keeping that in mind, I think, is important. in that it is completely fine to then follow up. And I love the people that would follow up, because sometimes you do just miss it and it's not intentional, and I'm sure that's happened to everyone here. But what's important is that when you do follow up, it's not, a guilt trip. And it's not like, hey, this is the third email I've sent you, so just checking in on what you're doing, But really, I'll tell you two stories to consider. So there's a talk by Y Combinator from the founder of Box, and he showed a typical sales cycle for them working with an enterprise customer that was very interested in using Box, like very interested. There were like 8 emails with like probably 4 or 5, like between every like second or third email, the person wouldn't respond. And so they train their sales team to keep following up and to assume that even for the person who's like, yes, we're gonna buy this product, it's gonna take potentially 8 emails to actually get them on a call to implement it. Another story is there was a panel where an exec from Microsoft Advertising was talking about how she screened emails from people she didn't know. And she said that she would actually wait to see if they would follow up before she would respond. Because she realized that, you know what, I don't have enough time to respond to every email in my inbox. And if this was important enough to this person, then they would follow up. So I always think about that, because of course I get, my own insecurities, like, well, maybe they didn't respond because they didn't want to, like because they thought my idea was stupid or my resume wasn't worth it. But I always think about that example and I'm like, you know what, this is important to me and I'm gonna follow up. This is how I'm showing this person that this matters to me. And so my favorite line that I use for that is just bumping this up in your inbox. Any update on XYZ, and that'll just be, you write, like, I kind of write long emails, so, but let's say I have my question at the end, so when I bump the email, then I'll just have the question. And of course they'll be like, what are you talking about? And then that will encourage them to actually read the email that maybe they had missed before. These are the games I learned at Microsoft. The next part is as you're interviewing, and so I'm sure you guys have realized this already, in that people oftentimes don't tell you what's really going on with the team when you're interviewing. And so they will tell you what you want to hear, that it's a great culture and everyone's so passionate and collaborative. But that might not be the case. And so I used to think that just asking those questions was enough. And it's like, I asked the question, I got the answer I wanted, yes, this is gonna work. But what I realized is that it could be completely the opposite. And I wish that I realized earlier that it's important to pick up on the subtleties. Like, is this company's culture to love the company? Like, there are some startups especially, right, where everyone's like rah about it. If something's wrong in that company, no one can talk about it because everyone in the company loves the company, right? And so what you'll find is people being like, you're asking them how they like it, and they'll be like, I love it. I love it. Their eyes are this big. Like, if you see that, that's a sign. Something else that I found has helped me pick up on this kind of stuff is trying to gauge how the team is actually incentivized. So that is a question that they won't be able to not answer in a real way. And if that answer turns out to be one that clearly pits the team against each other, it clearly, like Amazon, for example, the way that that I had this question answered before was that they were incentivized to back up their stories with data. So you weren't supposed to raise ideas or feedback without having data to back it up. And it was incentivized for people to always get to the truth of the data, which meant that in meetings there, I don't mean to trash on Amazon, but I lived in Seattle for 4 years and had a lot of friends that would just get bullied in these things, you know, because the point was to find the truth in the data and whether there were lies there. So try and read between the lines of, you know, the answers to questions like that, and try and find out what it is that the employees are incentivized to do, because people by nature want to do a good job, right? They don't want to lose their job. They want to do what the company cares about. And so although we may think that, oh, well, I heard that the culture isn't great, but my direct team will be fine, or this person will be fine, you can't change culture. You know, culture sets the tone for what success looks like. And if success looks like competition, collaboration, you know, debate, for some people that works, but for people like me, that doesn't work. And on that note, something else that's extremely important is the importance of a good manager. And that's because if you've heard this quote of that people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. If your manager is terrible, how are you going to get promoted? You know, how are you going to get recognized and rewarded and appreciated for your work? And so if your manager sucks, okay, so do you want to be job searching again in 6 months? Because that is what will likely happen. And so I think part of the interviewing process is also making sure that you know who is going to be writing your review. And you know, what I also realized is, so there's a common cognitive distortion, which is black or white thinking, right? So it's either there's good managers and there's bad managers. But what I learned is that there are also okay managers. And if you have an okay manager, then you're gonna have an okay year in terms of your review, I mean. And why? It's because an okay manager is not going to go above and beyond to advocate for you or for the team. They're not going to get the resources or the visibility that's needed for the team to really reach its full potential. And if you're doing great work and you're working harder than that okay manager is, then they might not like that. Like that might make them look bad. And you might resent them because it sucks to be working harder than your manager. And so if you have an okay manager, I think in some ways it may actually be better to just, you know, be okay yourself. You know, have an okay year. You know, not every year is gonna be the one where you're gonna blow, you know, like, not every year is about your career. You know, sometimes there's other things that are more important in your life. And so it might actually be nice to have an okay manager who isn't, you know, putting this high pressure on you. So that's the, you know, if it's an okay manager, are you okay with that? You could be okay with that. The other way to figure that out is typically after you get your offer, that is a great time to really get the truth. Because at this point, or at least closer to the truth than you've been getting. Because as a candidate, they're trying to woo you. But as someone that's been given an offer, you're kind of already part of the team. And so you can ask to go and get some coffee or have a call with someone that reports to your manager. I've asked every time. And I've been saved, you know, because you go get coffee outside of the office and the truth comes out. You know, it turns out this person's actually planning on leaving, and out of the goodness of their heart, they actually hinted it to me somehow that I had to, of course, read between the lines, because what if that comes back to the manager? But do that. Or you can, you know, job search again in 6 months if you want. And to round that out, I think what's extremely important is realizing that everyone has different things that they're trying to get out of a job. And whatever those things are, I think it's important to turn them into a real checklist, like real criteria, how we talked about earlier. It makes me sad to see people settling for roles that don't meet that criteria, because it just seems like a temporary Band-Aid, and that wound is just gonna, a temporary Band-Aid with no ointment on it to actually heal what was wrong with the last position. That's my theory. So I think that by setting that list, it not only helps you shoot for what will be a better position than your last one, it also gives you those keywords that you can then throw around to people so that they can better connect you. But it also gives you the opportunity to actually run towards something than away from it. You know, if you're going through your interview and you have this checklist in mind, and then at some point through the interview process you realize, you know what, this role meets 5 out of 5, then you're gonna accept that and you're gonna feel like you got your dream job. If you're interviewing and it turns out that it's missing 2 out of 5 of that criteria, then you'll know that and you'll come into that recognizing that these are the trade-offs that I'm making. It'll help make the decision-making process one that's more about where are you going, you know, and not like I just can't do this anymore. I need to get away from this, because that's just a short-term fix. So I'd love to hear what some of your criteria is for your roles, and then I can share mine after that if you're interested. Mm-hmm.
Mine is who I'm interviewing with, seeing if that's going to be the person I'm working for, that I do have like a quick connection and that I feel positive about the person, because I did just leave someone that I had a horrible manager to describe it perfectly when we were talking. So that is like almost number 1 on my list, more so than the company even, the person.
Yes, having a great manager is so important. That was definitely one of my criteria as well. Is that anyone else's criteria? Is that something that, nice. What else?
I think that is a very difficult thing, because typically the managers who's going to hire you can mask that very well. I noticed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to investigate.
Very encouraging, very supportive, but by the time you're in, all hell will break loose.
Right.
We're having coffee with the potential colleague before you take it off. It sounds like a great idea. But so for me, working on something that matters. I mean, I'm in software, and I'd like to work on a product that can make a difference in the world.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, one of my previous jobs, I interviewed the manager at McDonald's, and he was great. But the problem with this, the organizations that I worked for, they're constantly ebbing and flowing. You're doing reorgs, you're getting managers, and so it's not really a great longer term tech. So you kind of have to look who else is surrounding, because you might get reorgs into another organization, and my gosh, that's the manager from
That is a really good point. So to consider not only who your manager might be when you first start, but also to look at their peer managers, because those might be your managers in 6 months. Microsoft would get reorged all the time also.
I think bigger companies do it. And it's company culture, right? You have to kind of learn about the company culture, not just the team culture.
Yes. And that's, I think, my theory is that some, MBAs at the top, that they just have fun with that stuff. It's like, oh, we can design business, like that's their way of doing business strategy, is through designing the right org chart.
Yeah, I was nodding, Amy, because, the job I just had, changed after the interview. The project changed, the manager that hired me was laid off. And, so I completely agree with you. And in fact, earlier this year I interviewed with Vox. And guess what? I loved it. One of my criteria is location. Since I'm in south of San Jose, I can't do the financial district. And I can barely do Redwood City and San Mateo, quite honestly. So Santa Clara County and Fremont, I hope. Guess what? Fox is moving to San Mateo. So I interviewed in Mountain View, and we were all like, yay, and then they were like boxing, no pun intended, to move to San Mateo. So I actually disagree with you about really, I think identifying the criteria is good, but holding fast to them may not be the best idea. Amy's idea is a little bit stronger for me.
Yeah, being flexible.
Look at the bigger picture, because your boss could get laid off, the company can move. You have to be in alignment with your favorite company, where they're heading, and uncover strategy and direction so that you're part of the mix of success, and be open to the fact your project could change, you can get a bad review, all kinds of things. I mean, the only thing that's constant is that it does change. You have to be open to that that's what's gonna happen, and Amy's strategy is really good, is look at the bigger picture. Who's your boss's boss? Ask for an interview with your boss's boss to see how your boss is being managed. It's not about them interviewing me. I actually ask for additional interviews with the people I wanna talk with.
That's really good advice. Does I'd like to open it up to any other tips, because I've run through some here, but I want to learn from other people here in the group. What are some ways that you have managed your psychology through this job search?
I actually have a question
Mhm.
regarding your previous point
Oh,
about
sure.
day management. So for somebody who's been out of work for a long time, can we afford to make that kind of criteria and stick to it and not be more flexible and say, let me just take on something because just to have it on my resume, and then eventually start looking for something more permanent? Or do you think it's
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and the question is whether in some circumstances, maybe if you want to put some job experience on your resume sooner than later, kind of whatever it may be. I think that that's fair. I think that I got this advice from my brother-in-law, and when you're looking for a job, to look at it, to actually be considering what job you want after that job. And so if you're thinking about what job you want after that job, then you know that whatever job you're getting in the short term is a stepping stone to that. So yes, I think in the year that I mentioned that I was job searching, I had taken a short-term role. So it was basically, I moved to a sister team that was doing the same underwhelming stuff, but I had a better manager. So that helped give me more confidence to be able to actually go through the interviews, and also gave me more time to be more selective. And through that process, I turned down 4 offers before I went with the one that met all 5 out of 5.
So in terms of goals, one thing I'm always looking for is an opportunity to make positive change and be appreciated for that and rewarded for it, lead to further opportunities. As far as tips, just as in networking, always try to be of service first. Try to offer somebody else something. It'll come back to you some way at some time. Don't get caught up in tit for tat.
Yeah.
And get as many informationals as you can, because that's how you're going to get a read on the culture. Take them from anybody working in the organization, and ask questions that are different of the people who aren't in the department that you're going to be working in. Such things as, tell